today with internationally acclaimed author and former pastor Tyler Woods. You have a book called 11th Hour Preparedness, and you have been on both sides of the fence in terms of non-ministry life. You've been an engineer, and you've done all kinds of crazy stuff. But today, well, sorry, I should allow you to say hi. Hi.
Hi.
There it is. Shameless plug, man. Do it. Get it.
Shameless plug.
Where can we get that book?
It's available on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and under the category of books, then you can either type my name or 11th Hour Preparedness.
That works.
That's funny.
So today, okay, if you guys don't know, we're actually friends with Tyler Woods. He's got a channel called The Bulletproof Pastor. I think you just changed the name of your channel, though. Is it the channel or just your call sign?
I shortened it. BP Devo.
Okay. So
now people think I'm a devotee of British Petroleum, but oh well.
Yeah. So here's the scoop. One of the things that we hear a lot. Am I fuzzy? She's cleaning me.
Sorry,
she's grooming me.
Brutus hair.
One of the things we hear a lot from friends is like, well, you're a Christian, and so the Bible tells you that you're supposed to trust God with everything in your life, but why in the world would you ever store away so much food? Why would you ever be so concerned with having that amount of medicine on your shelf and all of the stuff that goes with it? And so I wanted to open up the floor for you to give your what you would reply. Why are you as a Christian, as it just sounds like you're just not trusting God? What's the deal with the preparedness thing?
Hey, I got a perhaps an issue. We may not be live.
We are.
Well, I don't see anything on Terry's iPad.
Well, you're live, so
well,
to address the question.
I'm alive. Okay. I'll just stay in the dark. I've been there most of my life. It works.
We'll tell you. Yeah, we're looking at comments.
Yeah, I see it.
Comments. I just don't see anything on the screen, but that's okay. Why should a Christian prepare? Why don't we quote just trust God like the children of Israel did in the wilderness, where God fed them with manna during the day and water from a rock, and God can do it. He did it for the prophet when he was fed by a raven. So why don't we just live in faith? And to that, in a situation where God would call us to something that we could not possibly be prepared for, then truly we can trust that. But on the other hand, we're told in God's word to go to the ant, which prepares for winter. And, during times of plenty, they stock it away, and we're supposed to emulate that. And we have the example of Joseph, who was warned of God that there would be a drought, and as such, there would be, great poverty, and that he was given so many years of bounty ahead that they would store ahead and prepare for that. And, you do those things on what you see coming. So a wise man considers the evil that's coming and basically gets out of the way. And if you see that there's going to be trouble coming as far as resource and, in our case, great inflation, then it's wise to purchase ahead while it's cheap and store it away. And, this is a biblical principle, so there's no problem with that.
Well, how do you figure that people have gotten to the point where, and I think I know what I feel about this, but how do you think people have gotten to the point where they feel like there's just no need?
I think I think that goes back to the euphemism that denial is not just a river in Egypt. We don't want to accept the fact that there's going to be trouble ahead. This is where the common teaching that surrounds the rapture, there's no need to prepare because we're all going to be whisked away before the first sign of trouble.
That's
Yeah.
kind of how the book is written.
No.
Tell that to the Christians in the Soviet Russia for 73 years, lived under unbelievable persecution.
Yeah.
And just to visit, just to fellowship together in a community of believers could become a death sentence. So
Yeah.
how about North Korea, where Christians are hustled away to work camps, or in communist China, where if you are a Christian believer, you just might be a candidate for organ harvesting. I mean, there's terrible things that are going on in this world, and all because of faith. So we think here in America, because God has truly blessed this country, that we're going to be immune for any of that coming our way.
Yeah, I think that the blinders are on. And I think that the society that we live in, the media that we consume, the music we listen to, the news, it gives you the impression that nothing bad could possibly happen here.
Oh yeah, no, especially up here, in central Wisconsin. There's nothing around. There's nothing could go wrong here.
Yeah, we just
nothing.
we lost power, and there's what, a foot and a half
snow.
snow.
Yeah, something like that.
It's ridiculous, and if you're not ready for that, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reality is that society breeds this environment of lackadaisical, nothing bad's going to happen, my world will never change. And especially the kids growing up now that have come through the public education system, they basically preach that the government will take care of you, some government entity will take care of you, you don't have to worry about it. I think that's just a horrible deception that people are going to get burned.
Yeah, the longer you live, the more those are conflicting terms. The government's going to take care of you. There's nothing to be concerned about. The government trying to take care of me is something I'm very concerned about.
Because it's
I've been through a bunch of very serious disasters. I've seen FEMA come to power, and I've seen them come to town. They always come late, bring little, and are ineffective.
Leave early.
Yeah. And the whole idea that FEMA's here to protect you, it's ridiculous. The number of people that I know that have been protected by the federal windstorm protection insurance that you can't get privately. It has to be it has to be the federal insurance program. And I don't know anybody who's really been even marginally covered for their losses from Hurricane Harvey. But I know many that through generous action of nonprofit organizations, they came to their rescue and basically rebuilt their home. So private enterprise, it works very well. Public enterprise, how many people travel with Amtrak anymore? When government took over, it died.
No.
So, okay, question for the participants here in the chat. And so a yes, a no, a check, or something. This will be just interesting for me to see. How many of you guys believe that if there was a major catastrophe, that the government would help you get back on your feet ASAP, Johnny on the spot? How many of you believe that or don't believe that? Because I would like to see the check marks. Oh, by the way, if you don't mind hitting a thumbs up, it really does help the stream. But while they're checking or not checking, you as a mom, Christa, as a believer, we were Christians before we started getting into preparedness. What were your thoughts when I started saying, hey, we should probably consider these things?
Well, the first thing that he did was, I think I want to keep bees. And
I came home and said that.
I think you're nuts. Because I was terrified of them. But after we were talking about it, just look, this is what is going on in the news and in the world. And it's really started to make sense. Okay, we have 3-4 days of groceries in our house at that time, and we had 7 kids at the time.
Mhm.
And wait a minute, they
What
want to
happened?
eat 3 times a day.
I know, isn't that so selfish?
Right. I
Gosh.
kind of think to prepare a little bit more for this, especially one of our children is G-tube fed. And you know what? If there is no delivery service coming, how am I going to feed this child? She the only way she can survive is if I put food in through a port in her belly.
Literally.
Literally. So yeah, I think we need to work on figuring out how to feed her and feed all of them, to where they're going to survive and thrive.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
here's my question to you, Pastor Woods, is when did you start in the preparedness mindset? Because I kind of get the impression reading your book that this is not an overnight thing. You've been at this for decades. Was there a moment of, oh my gosh, the light bulb went off and you decided I have to do this? Or was it just like a lot of guys growing up, like who were maybe Boy Scouts, and one thing just leads to another? How did your progression happen there?
Well, actually, I've never been in Boy Scouts, but um, it did grow from kind of my upbringing, my ancestry, and the history of our family. When I was in grade school, our area up in the Pacific Northwest, where there are never any hurricanes, well, we got hit with the tail end of a hurricane,
Oh,
and it knocked power out for like 10 days. And we didn't suffer because my dad was raised that way. I mean, he came through um, the Depression and growing up with 7 brothers and sisters, and they just lived differently then. And we didn't struggle through uh, having no power. We were camping in the living room.
yeah.
Uh, my dad was cooking things in the fireplace, and it was cool. It was awesome. And I saw the great advantage of having resources, and more importantly, having the knowledge to do without all of the conveniences. And my dad was a chef. My grandmother was an awesome Danish cook, and they never used. In fact, they hardly used recipes. They just put food together with basic ingredients. And the um, the idea of making biscuits from a box of Bisquick, or pancakes from a box of Hungry Jack pancake mix, or anything like that, was just a foreign thing. That's just not how we do things. You've got flour, eggs, baking powder. You just put it together and make it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it's all sort of a mindset of how I was raised. And then over the time of my life, the last time I counted it up, it was almost a dozen formally declared disasters, which I jokingly say my life has been one disaster after another. But in each of those disasters, it was never a hardship. I was the one helping others get along because I already had those skills. And
That's an excellent segue into what I was going to ask you next. Is now a lot of this might sound pretty self-serving, which also goes against what Christians should be about. Because if all we're doing is storing up for ourselves and protecting ourselves and making sure that we're okay, that's kind of only part of the story. And for me, one of the reasons why we prepare is so that we can continue to be able to share the gospel with people, because you can't share the gospel with people if you're dead. I mean,
yeah,
I guess
exactly.
your legacy might, maybe, if there is one,
Mhm.
but I think we need to stay alive to spread the gospel to those who need it, and treat your family obviously as you should, do, which is protect them in every way. But you can't preach the gospel to somebody if you're not around?
That's right. To reverse this whole question, preparing is an unselfish thing to do. Not preparing for the believer is very selfish. It says, hey, I don't need to prepare because when I die, I go to heaven, and the sooner I die, the better. Well, that's pretty selfish. And there is one purpose that I have for remaining on this earth, and that is that I share Christ with those who maybe in the midst of a big catastrophe are finally, they're shaken to their roots, and they're ready to listen, and they need to hear that message. But if I'm dead and gone and rejoicing in glory, then I'm not there to share it. So the
Yeah.
one purpose I have here on this earth is to live for Christ and to share his word. And part of enabling me to do that is to stay alive. And not selfishly, I'll feed my neighbors. I mean, when Hurricane Harvey came through, I was here the next day, and people started getting back to their homes as best they could. We had 5 neighbors on our street that were here when I after the first day. Well, the first thing I did was I started baking bread. I made 5 loaves of bread and went around and just gave them a fresh hot loaf of bread. Boy, was that ever appreciated. You made an inroad to that family.
Yep.
And we can, you build these pathways to be able to share the most important message. And if it takes a loaf of bread or batch of cookies or anything like that, just keep on doing it.
So we've got a comment from a friend of ours over the pond who lives in London, Sri Patel. Preaching the gospel is so important. Like, without people on YouTube spreading the gospel, I would never have converted.
Wow.
And because of that, I love to speak about Jesus.
That's amazing.
That's terrific.
Without food, without
Right.
the ability to share the gospel, she would never have heard.
Mm-hmm.
Praise God.
Wow.
So I've got a question for you, Mom. We don't live in fear, but we do prepare for things that God puts in your mind, and those what if situations. Like, for example, what if we're without power for a month? What if this? Where do you see the country headed in terms of, do you have anything on your radar that you go, you should probably pay attention to this?
No, I try to avoid the news altogether, and then you can tell me
That's
when
true.
we need to really be concerned, because
Okay, time to panic.
right, when it's time to panic, then okay, fine. But for right now, I'm trusting.
We don't panic.
No, we don't panic. I'm trusting that the Lord is going to take care of us no matter what. When I need to be concerned, he'll let me know.
I'll say something like, hey, have you considered what we would do if we needed electricity in the barn and we couldn't get it to do the milking and stuff?
Right. I would hand milk again, like we did before. But
that's how it would happen.
I out of the two of us, you need to be the concerned, paying attention one. I need to be caring for the kids. Not that you're not caring for the kids, but I need to care for their everyday needs, and the emotional stuff, and that's what moms do.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that men and women are different? Wait a minute. I just cursed.
Yes.
I said men and women, not many things.
No, yes, men and women.
Whiffin and miffin.
Men and women are different, and they have different roles in their homes. Yes, I did say that.
Just cursing
they
again.
have different roles.
I like rolls. I like warm buttered rolls,
especially with butter. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So, Pastor Woods, I was going to lay it on pretty thick, man. Because if you're watching this, you got to know that he and I have this weird sense of humor between each other, and it's fun and it's cool. But like, sometimes I may, point out the fact that he's really just incredibly, like, almost morbidly old.
Yeah, and I'm closer to heaven than you are.
Well, that's actually the funny thing is that how do you segue into that, which is this? Being an older person, chronologically challenged, if you will, Do you have different concerns than you would say if you were 30?
Actually, not, because I have the same. Actually, maybe I have more assuredness that I'm going to be here as long as God has a use for me here, and I don't sweat. I don't sweat my death. It's just not an issue for me. When I graduate this life, it's because, and my term that I always use is that when Jesus pulls the bus up to the curb, I'm jumping on. I'm not going to
Yeah.
ask him to circle the block one more time. I want, you know, when
Yeah.
that door
Hey,
opens, I'm
Brad,
on.
lights off when you're done.
Yeah, somebody else turn the lights off. I'm not going to be even bothered with it. And you say, well, that's pretty rough, because what about Terry, my wife? And she needs me here. Well, all my answer there is that Jesus is driving that bus, his schedule, his time, and he says, if I come and take you, then I will meet the needs of those you leave behind. So I just relax and rest in that. Now, there are days that I think that someone's warming up the bus, and there are days where I keep looking up the street hoping it'll get here. So there's both ways. Um, I don't know. I just don't sweat death. I don't worry about it. It's not in my job description to worry about. It's not my schedule, and I have the assurance of where that journey is going to take me. So I'll just leave that up to God, and pay attention to every day as it comes.
A friend of mine just texted, so I don't know if he was watching, but oh no,
he's
he
not.
doesn't. It's
He's
going to
not.
keep beeping. So here's the thing. Krista knows when I'm getting ready to do something very, very dangerous, I'll ask about our life insurance policy. Is it paid up, honey?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
then she's like, what are you going to do?
yeah. The life insurance is paid up. I don't sweat death for myself. Okay. So the one thing I do that is the main concern is for my kids.
Yeah.
Because we still have young ones here, and are they going to be cared for after we're gone? And yes, we've got all that set up. So I don't have to worry, because I know, like you said, the Lord is going to take care of all of their needs.
But it's still hard.
Yeah.
It's because we're humans.
Yep.
And we're designed to have that family element be something that is precious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, though, that there's that hard, how do you show concern and love and care without letting it seep into fear?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
personally, I don't sweat death, but I'll tell you, I have a great concern for leaving Terry or leaving, my kids. That's where faith has to come in, to know that God's going to do all things well,
Right.
and he will not abandon them. If I am necessary in their life, as Paul said, to be, but um, but I forget how he was phrasing it, but he said basically, to remain is more needful for you. So he had
Oh, yeah.
the assurance that he was going to be around a little longer. But he said, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain.
Mm-hmm.
So I
That's
know, for me personally, to live as Christ, and to die as gain. But it's necessary for those I love that I be here for them.
But it is more
Till
beneficial
God
for
says
you.
he'll take over.
Yeah. So now you live in South Texas. We're up here in literally the North Woods.
South Canada.
South Canada, yeah. Or they were going to rename it Warm Happy Funland, but that didn't go through.
No.
Yeah, you're in the outer reaches of civilized humanity.
Yeah. So we actually would have very little that society, unless there was a major collapse, that society would encroach upon us unless we wanted it to.
In other words, if the infrastructure failed, you wouldn't know it for a week.
We probably would just think the power was out.
Yeah.
But is there any kind of I don't know, situation that you see is more likely than another? Because we all can feel that there's something bad happening. I mean, you can tell a believer, non-believer, anybody. You can say, do you think that we're on the right track? And everybody's like, no. Whether
Oh,
you're right, left, or center doesn't matter. I'm not none of that. I'm saying that everybody knows intuitively things are coming apart.
yeah.
But is there anything that you see in your world that might be in one of those possibilities?
I have looked at um, the history of calamity and the calamities that have plunged entire areas, regions, countries into into collapse. And um, now hurricanes, you get a little bit of warning. You get maybe 4 or 5 days. However, we were told when Harvey was coming that it was going to hit 90 miles away from here in Port O'Connor. And that day, that Friday that the hurricane hit, it changed direction, turned 90 degrees, and put the crosshairs right on us.
Oh my God.
Actually, the eye of the hurricane hit about 15 miles from here.
Wow.
So it was, it's dead on. So yeah, um, even with hurricanes, you can get unexpectedly hit. You know it's coming, but it's not going to be right here, and then all of a sudden it's in your lap.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, we know.
fall, the fall of the Soviet Union. Yeah, everybody knew it's weak, it's weak, it's weak. But I'll tell you what, people woke up the first morning and says, "Oh no, it happened." It was like instant. Earthquakes happen suddenly, and economic collapse. It's kind of like countries are much like a bird sitting on the wire out there. They may be sick and they may be next to death, but to survival depends on faking health. So they will be sitting there chirping and singing until they drop over and fall off the wire dead. They Countries do the same thing. Economic collapse is not something you advertise as coming. So they just collapse and they do it
Hey
suddenly.
guys, we're thinking next Tuesday you might want to have your money out of the
No,
bank.
no, they no. Won't never.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no norm, there's no warning. It's kind of like the rapture. If somebody says it's going to happen on Tuesday,
Don't
don't
listen.
take that.
Run
Away.
away. Run
Run away.
away. Run away. Yeah.
However, it could happen tomorrow and you won't know it until tomorrow. So it's not something that you can um it's not something you can respond to other than be prepared for it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why we do our shopping once a month, but even when we go to the grocery store to shop once a month, it's not like we're out of food. We've got tons. We
Right.
put it away, we store it, we buy stuff that, I mean, look at your finance and your economy as the chest freezer you have out in the shop. Um, if you ever had one of those for very long, you know what it is to open the lid and find out that probably the compressor went out last Tuesday.
Oh.
Yeah. And what's inside isn't anything you can keep. By the
Uh,
way, if you have a chest freezer, I would invest in one of those freezer alarms that
All
will
of us have those.
alarm your house that, hey, the freezer died, give you a chance to get out there and rescue the food.
Yep.
Because those things can hold thousands of dollars worth of meat
Mm-hmm.
and it can
so,
be gone in a few days.
Yep.
so I've got a
So,
question for everyone in the chat. There's 134 of us. So here's the question. And since we don't know where you live, you can be honest, because nobody's coming to get your stuff. Promise. How many days of food do you think you have set aside for your family at your home? Would you say it's a week? Would you say 3 days? Would you say a month? 100 days? I'm curious because one of the things that we read when we started getting into preparedness was that the Mormon faith, which is not ours, we're not busting on Mormons or anything.
No.
It's not clear that the one of the reasons why they are required by their faith to have a lot of food on hand for their entire family, it's part of their faith, was because of the was it oh shoot, the that expedition, that
Donner Party.
the Donner Party,
Hmm.
Oh,
and they
yes.
ended up falling into cannibalism,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and that's one of the main reasons why they do that. And I'm just curious because as believers, I think you're right. We should be able to feed ourselves and care for our neighbors if necessary. Um, and I just was wanting to see what people are saying. I'm seeing a month, 6 months, 2 weeks, 6 months, 2 years. Wow, Joyce. Wow. So what would you say you would think a good benchmark would be? Because I know this is probably in your book. There's probably charts and graphs and statistics, which is 11th Hour Preparedness, by the way, Tyler Woods. And what would you say would be a good start for everybody?
Well, it sort of depends on where you are, how far you can go with the food that you have on store. Because if you're totally dependent, let's say in an urban environment, you would be totally dependent on that as your only source of food.
Right.
If you live in a rural area where you have a productive garden already, then your food requirements are less. And if you haven't started a garden yet, you need 3 years supply because it's going to take you 3 years to get your garden actually productive.
Right.
Right.
I mean, good, Krista, Brad, you're a perfect example. You moved to Wisconsin. How long did it take? How many years did it take before your garden was really producing well?
Well,
It still
in our
hasn't happened.
defense, it's not there yet. Um,
Yeah. And how long have you been there and you've been working on it?
well, we've been in Wisconsin for 5 years, but we've only been in this house for 2.5.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
That's,
there, yeah. Of
No,
course, this past summer
we got a lot of food.
we had a bumper crop of tomatoes. We couldn't even get them all before the frost.
yeah.
There were so many. It was
But
insane.
And you're in an agricultural area where the soil has probably been somewhat prepared before you got there.
Well, and truth be told, too, we did start with amazing soil in raised beds.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have the weed problem that you normally would have.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we let's say we cut corners in a good way to skip years of prepping the soil in the garden. So, but I'm with you on that point. I do get a kick out of people who say they're into survival stuff, preparedness, and then why? Because I bought this pack of survival seeds in a seed bank, and then if everything goes south, I'm gonna rip up my yard in the back, and I'll make a garden back there, and that's how.
Right.
Here you are. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
I believe in that.
The important part of being prepared is, yes, you have stuff stocked, but you also have to have a way of restocking that stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Preparedness is an ongoing thing that you're doing now, not something you store away as a can of seeds on the top shelf of your closet.
right.
And you
Right.
got to know how to use what the heck it is that you've got.
Mhm.
Like if
Yeah.
it's seeds, you better start gardening now.
You got to know what's what.
Do you know how to make a fire with maybe one of those little flints, or can you do it without one?
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
have to have a lighter?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have to know how to do some basic things if you're going to expect to make it a little bit longer.
Right.
We
Right.
had an exercise of a preparedness exercise, and we ran a group called CQ, which is just colloquialism. Colloquium is what it is, but basically we taught skills, kind of like 4-H for grown-ups. And at that camp out, we had some contests, and one of the contests was how quickly can you get flame using primitive means. No lighters, no matches, no magic lighting juice, no flammable liquids. And I was amazed. Our group was able to produce, I mean, out of 5 contestants, all 5 produced flame in under a minute.
Wow, that
That's
is
awesome.
impressive.
With those little pyro rods. They're not actually flint and steel, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to get, a fire going in 60 seconds with those means. It was a dry day. That doesn't work the same if you're in a rain-soaked Pacific Northwest forest, but
Right.
but they were able to do it. and I was pretty proud of them. That's a good bunch of good
Yeah.
bunch of people.
So now, as we round out our chat here, I want to bring us back full circle to should a Christian be in preparedness? I hesitate to use the word prepper just because it's got such a bad connotation and it's got so many different definitions. I'm just going to stick with emergency preparedness, having food on the shelf, knowing some skills that'll keep you warm, the ability to do basic things like canning, food preservation, growing things. So the floor is yours. Why should a Christian be into preparedness?
Well, because I don't want to be so dependent upon an infrastructure that is weak and can fail in an instant. I mean, we should never be dependent upon the workings of man. We need to be dependent on our God and on his hand to provide for us. And part of that is to do the work and be like the ant and lay up ahead. And even if we just look at it from being good stewards of God's provision for us, preparedness means that I buy in larger quantities and means that it doesn't cost as much. So I'm not as dependent upon the financial things of this world. Mm-hmm. So we save money. We have better quality food. We are feeding our family with more nutritious, better food, and our health is better. Everything all the way down the line. But to be totally dependent on a government system, yeah, that is no different than becoming enslaved to it. And anything that the government says we have to do because we are totally dependent upon them for all of our life.
Yeah.
And that's not the way God wants us to live. We want to be dependent upon God and
Amen.
to be his servants, to do his will his way.
Amen.
So it makes sense.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so as we round out this chat, plug your book. Would you pick up your book again? Would you 11th Hour Preparedness? You can get it on Amazon.
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's 11. You can see it's 11th.
Right.
Not there we go. 11th Hour Preparedness, making choices while we can. This is the second edition, which is already outdated, but the information in it is correct. It's just a lot of the things that I forecasted might happen are now history. It keeps happening. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, Ty Woods, thank you so very much for your time. Mm-hmm. Christa, as always, it's a delight.
Always a delight.
Always a delight.
Oh my gosh.
All right, you guys.
Someday I'll get Terry in here, but she's making cookies.
Yeah, we've been listening to her.
Sorry. She says, "I'm sorry."
It's funny. Okay.
I was waiting for the dishwasher to go or something. Anyway, you guys have an
making
awesome
up cookies for our neighbors, and if they're watching, plug your ears. But
you're not getting. You're bringing them to me.
That's funny.
Have an awesome and blessed day, guys. Bye.
God bless.